The pressure's on us, definitely.
we drew the worst card here, man. Well, Ryan, dude, well done, man. That was awesome. Yeah. So, Antti, shall we just quit now and go drink beer?
Maybe we should. I don't know.
Yeah. Can somebody confirm that you can see the screen? Just a real quick one.
Yes, we can.
Marvelous, marvelous, marvelous. Alrighty. So, first of all, Ryan, that was epic, man. We're always blown away by what you guys present. Antti, are you ready to do this, my friend?
Let's start the show.
Cool. Alrighty. So, first of all, everyone, thank you so much for having us, Raz and team. Thank you so much for organizing, folks. I would say welcome to Dataverse Summit, but yeah, we're like just more than halfway through. So, just a big shout out to everyone that's been sponsoring and all of that. A massive thank you. It's been epic so far. I've learned some stuff. First of all, Antti and I both have kids, so if we get invaded by small citizen developers, we're sorry. Okay.
Mine just left. Mine just went out the door.
Mine are just coming home. So the next one is just thanks to the organizers. You guys rock. You know, we appreciate it so very much. So thank you for sorting this all out for us. And yeah, we're very happy to be here presenting after the amazing Ryan Jones, and then before Manuela and Michael. I mean, man, and I know there's some pretty amazing presenters to come, right? So yeah, Dataverse Summit. Antti and I decided we would do something a little bit different, didn't we?
Yeah.
We decided that everyone today is likely going to be talking about Dataverse and how awesome it is for data storage. We figured we wouldn't tell you about data storage. Well, you know, a little bit about it, not loads. We'll tell you some stuff about it, right? So we're going to be talking around Dataverse as a governance tool. Now, first of all, who are these two people? Antti, do you want to go first, bro?
Yeah, sure, man. So yeah, my name's Antti Pajunen. Don't even try to pronounce my name if you're not Finnish. And that's it. You know, I come from Finland, work for a company called Forward Forever, Microsoft's business MVP, Dataverse lover, and a CRM boy at heart, I guess.
Sweet. Thanks, man. So hey, folks, my name is Chris Huntingford. I'm Avanaud's Global Power Apps lead. I don't really do much with just Power Apps. It's more the platform. I get to run around and talk about how awesome Dataverse is as well. And yeah, you know, we get to interact with people like Ryan Jones every now and then and talk about how epic the product is. But yeah, my role is just to kind of do product evangelism, essentially. I'll say just, but yeah, it's a little bit more. And Antti and I actually go way back. We ran the first ever Dataverse hackathon, actually. It was called Demystifying the Common Data Service. Well, that's what it was called in the day. And yeah, that was the first time we ever met. So we've been buddies ever since. We bunk up when we go to when we enter Winter MVP Summit last time, and whenever we can. It's really good fun. So yeah, we've been friends for a while. And we figured we'd talk a little bit about I don't know, what are we calling it this week, man? Common Data Oakendale Flexi XRM Service Verse. I know I'm going to get my accent. I don't work for Microsoft anymore, so yeah, there we go. But yeah, we're going to talk to you a little bit about Dataverse, right? And you've had this on the whole day, so yeah, we're kind of excited about that. But I guess the whole thing is we're going to show you a couple of slides you've been seeing before. We're pretty happy to drill into them. This is our favorite one, hey?
The onion slide, yes.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of you will have seen this loads of times in various colors, formats. If you're Kim Dupois, who I know is floating around the call somewhere, or Cost and Growth, you've redesigned this site 16,000 times and put on much sexier logos. But this is the one I shamelessly stole and will keep forever because I think it's one of the best ways to explain Dataverse, right? So Antti, a lot of people on this call right now will make the assumption that Dataverse is just a database. Is it just a database?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. There's actually a lot more to it. The database, I think the database part really just enables us to build, you know, or store those good and awesome apps that we build or flows or, you know, whatever we do in Dataverse. But underneath, you know, under the hood, geez, there's so much stuff in it that's been sort of pre-built and already considered by Microsoft. Things that we don't really have to, you know, build on top of that Dataverse anymore.
Absolutely. So like that's the question I get all the time when I go ahead and talk to customers and I talk to folk from across the world. It's quite interesting because I've worked when I was at Microsoft. I worked with people that were, there we go. Carson's just put up his sexy slide. I was waiting for it. Guys, every time Carsten puts up a sexy slide, right, in the chat, Auntie's going to do a shot. No. So, no, the reason I like this is because when I chat to folks all over the world, I speak to people about, when I chat to modern workplace people who love SharePoint and Teams, everyone thinks Dataverse is a database. And it's not, it's a data storage facility, but with a service wrapper. There's so much more to it than just data as well. I mean, obviously Ryan mentioned a lot of talk around security and all the way. I mean, there's so many different layers of security going down from field level and data obfuscation there up into the authentication through Azure AD. You've got a data model that provides you, a really quick start to building stuff out, and it's a phenomenal tool. Dataverse. When I remember when I started in Dynamics, I actually started in version 3 for my sins. And I remember I actually posted on Twitter, on LinkedIn the other day. I remember doing my first ever Dynamics CRM installation, and I got installation exam, and I got 50% for it. And the funny part is Matt Necker made a joke. He's like, dude, you got more marks for learning how to uninstall it than to install it. And I guess that's the funny part now, right? So everything's cloud, but that's the great thing. When you look at Dataverse, it's so much more than just a database, right? And I always struggle to talk to I always struggle to kind of bring that to life with customers and partners and friends. And yes, family, believe it or not. My wife is actually learning this now, which is bananas. But yeah, I see what Angie's putting in the chat. But yeah, so it's way more than just a database. And I hope you all got that from today. I mean, Ryan let loose some really interesting facts about Dataverse. So just remember, when talking about tools like Dataverse, it is a tool set. It's not just a database. There's a lot more to it than that. Right. So, Antti, do you want to add anything?
No, I actually want to. I kind of want to ask you if you have a favorite layer in the onion. Or do you
Yeah.
eat it as a whole, or do you prefer one layer over the other?
Bro, I'm a bit like an ogre, right? I have layers myself, like Shrek. But actually, my favorite layer is definitely the security layer, because I think that that's going to be the most important. And what a lot of people don't realize on this call is that what we're going to take them through today is not Dataverse security. We're going to take them through something a little different. And what about you?
Well, that's a yeah. I was when I was asking that, I was like, what's my favorite layer? I think it's probably the integration layer. Maybe because it's maybe for me the hardest or the most abstract and the one that allows me to do a lot of cool stuff with Dataverse. Maybe ironically not maybe not always the layer that the first layer that I'd actually kind of visibly use, but maybe the most intriguing of the
Yeah.
layers for me.
So, folks, I've got to tell you this. Something that Antti doesn't know is he hasn't actually seen the next few slides. So this is going to get very entertaining, right? So first of all, why do we love Dataverse, right? So we've got a bunch of Dataverse love bunnies on the call right here, and it's quite cool, right? Because I do think that there are lots of reasons to love Dataverse, and obviously, you know, as the nerd I am, and everyone on this call has probably learned throughout today, we love to data model, right? Like I'm a data model geek. That's what I love doing. Give me any opportunity to model data, and that's what I'm going to do. Like today, this morning at 7:30 p.m., I was building a demo with like multiple secular relationships, and it was really cool. It was really awesome. I will still challenge any SQL person on this call. I can build a data structure faster than you can that works better. Yes, Dataverse is built on some SQL, right? And yeah, I'm probably going to get my butt kicked for saying that. But I don't know. For me, the data modeling part's probably the most interesting part of Dataverse, right? And that's one of the reasons I love it. And Antti, I know you're going to talk around data storage, and you see I mentioned it twice there. I don't know why. I was obviously high when I did this, but anyway, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the data storage part with Dataverse, in the big picture, we don't really have to think that much of all the nitty gritty and the nuances. And I'm not saying that there isn't stuff that we need to take, factor in. That's not the case, but everything's kind of pre-built for us. So the data storage, it sounds kind of dull, but the data storage is kind of there. It's just, it's, when you buy it, you just have the data storage there, right? Right from the scratch. You actually have it twice there. I don't know why. Yeah, and I guess with that, you're on mute, by the way, buddy. I guess with that is that data
Sorry.
storage part that data storage part and that whole, what I love about Dataverse is it's fairly, it's kind of easy to learn.
Mm.
It
From a
can be
code
hard,
perspective,
it
right?
can be a lot of work to learn, but it's kind of easy to learn, easy to adopt, easy to adopt.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? So from an adoption perspective, I think that if you have any inkling on building data models, Dataverse is the easiest thing in the world to pick up, right? Genuinely. And I know some SharePoint folk on the call may not agree, but honestly, if you just pop into some of the guides on Microsoft or Microsoft Learn, there's a number of really easy places to get, right? Now, that's the easy stuff to talk about. Now, the next slide is not as easy, right? I want to talk about why people don't like Dataverse. Okay. And this presentation might take a weird turn, but I'm happy for it to do so. So why do people not like Dataverse? Well, I got a number of reasons, right? And these aren't actual reasons. This is what I call perception. Okay. I've put perception on this slide, and here's why. Number one, people think it costs a fortune, all right? Which is, in my opinion, incorrect. I think it's perfectly well priced based on what you get. And Carsten put in the chat now, speed and agility. Here's my theory, right? From a cost perspective, Microsoft have given us an amazing platform that's actually quite well priced based on a capacity perspective. And you're building stuff at maybe 1/10 of the speed you would build when you're building it manually in SQL and having to link up all those things with Cosmos DB, Azure Blob, etc., etc. Are you going to spend all that time, dude? Honestly, are you going to spend all that time building out that services layer instead of just buying it straight out? You're going to give your money to someone, man. You're giving it to a partner, or you're giving it in your time, or you're going to give it to Microsoft. Either way, it's going to cost you. So wouldn't you prefer to just have the layer, the data layer from a cost perspective, and at least let Microsoft maintain it?
Yeah, just turn on the lights. That's it. Turn on the lights.
Exactly. The next one is licensing complexity. Again, I think that's a perception. I think that people don't read the licensing guide. It's pretty simple. People get afraid because they look at the licensing guide and go, oh my gosh, this is massively complicated, but it's actually not. If you look at some of the stuff that Kim Dupois has posted on social media around licensing, and I've actually, I've used his decks a number of times. And Carsten and Kim, feel free to chuck links in the chat, my friends. I know you guys have got some great content. Carsten's also done some good stuff. But look at the guide. There are some things you need to understand. Yes, things like multiplexing are real, okay? But it's all around intent. So when you actually think about what's going on from a guide perspective and you read it, it's not that hard to interpret, okay? And I'm happy to run anyone through that. I do licensing sessions all the time. I did one the other day, okay? If you just understand how Microsoft license and why they license, it's not too bad. So, Antti, would you agree with that?
I would, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's actually, once you kind of get into it, it it gets a lot more straightforward. I mean, there's that, again, that nitty-gritty and those edge cases, special scenarios where, you're kind of wondering what's going on, how does licensing work, is this right or wrong? But it's kind of straightforward almost, in a sense, and it's complex but straightforward.
Absolutely. The
I
next
don't know if
one,
that makes sense.
no, 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 but it does. I think it does. I think it's just reading, right? The next one, which Ryan brought up on the call, was data volumes. People say that Dataverse doesn't have the ability to store the data volumes that, Ryan was talking about, like petabytes of data. That's absolute piffle. It does have the ability to store that amount of data. It really absolutely can. Should you store that amount of data? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Can you afford that capacity? That's entirely up to you. But think about things like virtual entities. Antti, you said it yourself, the integration layers, right?
Right, right,
So it
right,
doesn't mean Dataverse can't do it. It means use the right tool for the job. So would you
right.
say that, do you think I'm speaking rubbish there from a volume perspective?
No, I mean, it's just like, I think the approach has to be like, where do you actually need to store that data? Where do you want to store that data? There was there's someone asking a good question on one of the Microsoft Teams the other day or yesterday, was asking, should I store my file attachments, like my PowerPoints and those on that timeline control that we have? I was like, I don't know. I mean, you can if you want to, but I'd rather come up with another data storage for that. I mean, that's not the best way to you know use your data storage. Maybe you want to store those in SharePoint. Maybe you want to store those in Azure Blobs or something. So it kind of depends on the perspective and the approach. How that should be handled. Maybe the issue is that there's not always enough consideration put behind, the different options. So maybe it's an awareness issue more than it is, a platform perspective issue.
Absolutely. And I think that some people think Dataverse is access on steroids, which it's really not, right? So next one, data complexity. I tend to fall in line with this one slightly because of the way Dataverse is structured and the referential integrity placed between different tables and things like that, and the ability to do auditing and security and all of that. But what's your take? Do you think Dataverse is too complex from a data complexity perspective?
I think it can feel overwhelming at start when someone's getting into Dataverse and getting started with it. It can definitely feel a bit complex, and there's definitely aspects of in it that we'll probably never that easily understand. But I think this is again a question of perspective, and how much do you really need to understand? What is what's some of that stuff that you can just pretty much like leave out of the box and not think about. So people
Yeah.
try to maybe understand a bit too much about Dataverse. What you have to understand is, if you buy a car, you don't necessarily want to understand how the engine works. It just freaking works. If it doesn't, you take it to a mechanic. So I think with Dataverse, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have seen people get into a bind of the way that relationships are managed in Dataverse, but we can get past that. And things like enterprise scalability. Organizations, walk into organizations and they think that Dataverse needs to be pre-approved and reapproved when they've already approved the entirety of the Azure stack. It's built on Azure, right?
Right.
It is massively scalable. Ryan said it in his talk earlier, like this thing is working in organizations with hundreds of thousands of users. So what do you think? What's your take?
Right. I mean, again, maybe people think and companies think that it's that odd child out that doesn't belong. It's new. It's actually not new, and
No, it's not.
it's been around for forever. The name's changed, so that's why it feels new. But again, I think it's more an awareness issue. I mean, if you're already set for Azure and you built things on Azure, then it's uh, I know I'm simplifying, but it shouldn't really be that complex. Maybe companies and people make it too complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And then your management overhead. Sometimes I get on board with this because bringing on Dataverse in the very beginning of an organizational change process, when somebody's, as Ryan mentioned, you've got a ton of Access databases and SQL Armageddon, or sorry, Excel Armageddon, and you're looking to re-platform a lot of that data into something real. Yeah, it can actually be a bit of a management overhead in the very beginning, but it's slightly scary because when people take this on board, often they don't understand what's under the hood, and it gets a little terrifying, right? So I think it can be a management overhead in my brain, and that's what I've experienced with customers and partners. When I was chatting to a lot of modern workplace partners, just the ability to bring Dataverse on as a tool and learn it and get that digital upskill can be quite tough in the beginning, right? And that's
Yeah,
what I've seen.
definitely. I think and I see that a lot. I mean, I see that management overhead card and that IT overhead, whatever you want to call it. I see that a lot. And bluntly said, lots of times that's lack of awareness. There's just hasn't been enough justification behind what do we use Dataverse for. A lot of times it's just that you have your licenses bought, and someone's kind of already in that sense turned on the lights, and then you're not sure why you want to use this, and you feel stuck with it. So there's really, again, lack of awareness. Why should we use this? What should we use this for? And usually the explanation is management overhead. That's what I hear. That's usually an explanation, an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I want to take a step back, right? And I want to drill out a little bit because we've been fixating on Dataverse this whole time, and everyone else has on this call, which is epic, right? But the Power Platform's a big old ecosystem. Okay, and we can all agree that, right? I mean, we've got app makers, we've got flow makers, we've got PVA makers, we've got Power BI makers, we've got all sorts of people building some really good stuff. Okay. And in the platform, it is a platform, right? That's why I'm pretty happy to be at Dataverse Summit. It's finally not just about a Power App. It's so much bigger than that, right? So we get to talk about actually the entire ecosystem and what it's all about. And I have this thing, right? and some of the people on this call know that I have a whinge about this every now and then. But do you remember many moons ago when Microsoft used to run around talking about the three clouds?
Yeah, yeah. I still use that three cloud analogy for, for I think customers who are on the lower edge of the adoption curve that
Yeah.
might be, might have their foot in the door through Azure and have been using, luckily Microsoft 365, but are kind of new to the third cloud. So I still use that approach sometimes. Have to admit.
Mate, I can't. I like for the longest time, even when it was three clouds, I'm always like, well, we were competing against Amazon and Google and all these people. It's one cloud, right? So when we talk about this whole thing, we're talking about one cloud, and Dataverse is part of the cloud, the Microsoft cloud, right? So I wanted to get that out the way. Everyone knows I have a whinge about it, but when you're actually looking at the entirety, and yes, Carsten, I stole your side. No, Carsten, I don't feel bad. But when I take a look at the entirety of the ecosystem, and where Dataverse kind of lives and fits and what it does, it underpins a lot of things, right? And yes, when we're building out solutions like Power Apps and Power BI, a lot of the time they can seem kind of irrelevant. In fact, they should seem kind of irrelevant if there's no data. Not O data, no data. Yeah. Like, dude, have you ever built a Power BI report with no data? Looks crummy. It doesn't exist. It's like the most useless thing. Okay. So the
For me,
ecosystem.
for me, it looks crummy with OData as well.
So it's kind of like data is king or queen of the whole platform, right? And it's super lucky that we have this amazing relationship with Dataverse. And I can see Scott, who's actually Scott Sewell. If you don't follow him, you should on Twitter. The dude's a legend, right? He's a Power BI machine. And by far, Scott has actually shown me the best demo I've ever seen in my life. It's the Titanic demo. If you ever get a chance, just check it out. Anyway, sorry, that's a sidetrack. But ultimately, when we look at the ecosystem, it's so much bigger than just an app or just a flow. It's massive. When you look at the Power Platform ecosystem, you got to see beyond the app, yeah? Like I love the idea that everyone looks at the app and everyone goes bananas when they see a Canvas app working, but it's a Canvas app. I mean, awesome, right? But the platform is the real key thing. It's how you snap those digital bricks together to build out the ecosystem. And actually, when you look at the platform ecosystem, what do you got there? You got ALM, yeah, operations, governance, monitoring, process automation, supports. There's tons of stuff in the platform. Okay. It's not just an app. It's not just something that Karen from accounts whacks together and sends to the rest of the team. It's so much bigger than just an app. It's a platform. So the question I've got to you, my friend, okay, is when looking at the platform, okay, as a whole, and looking at things like governance, right? Because governance is a really big part of this whole thing, and security and compliance, right? Yes, Carsten, I stole another one of your slides. I don't feel bad. When looking at the entirety of the platform, my question is, what do we think about the focus on governance? What do we think about security? Do you think that Dataverse can help with any of this?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Excellent.
And I think a lot of, like, one big big kind of black hole and an unknown is that whole word, that governance. I think that can be a scary word. That can be a
Yep.
scary word for many organizations.
That's because it's about as clear as mud. Governance could be anything, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at our environment, when we look at our Power Platform ecosystem, one of the first things, and you would have heard this from Manuela and Mike, I didn't manage to make the beginning of the session, but managing things like environments are very, very important. Okay, environments are hugely important in your platform. So when you're going through the whole process of setting up your Power Platform governance strategy, looking at your environment management strategy is really key, right? So would you agree with that?
Yes. 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 That's one of the first things that we would definitely want to look at, among the first things. What do we actually like? And usually that relates to something almost tangible. I know it's not tangible. It kind of, feels tangible. Where do we build? That's one of the
Yeah.
first questions. Where do we build? We have to understand
Yeah.
environments.
Exactly, man. And that's the first thing I get asked is like Microsoft on the website, you go and look at the environment strategy and it's all about dev, test, prod, and pre-prod and this. But actually, it's more than that. When you look at the types of solutions people are building, where do we create them? right? Where do we create? Where do we build? So if I've got an app or a solution that's not actually that mission critical, where do I make it?
Yeah, or if it's is it yours or is it your team's, or it does it expand to your whole business or to your BU? How is the organizational impact of that app versus impact on your team's work?
Absolutely. And I've set up environment strategies all over the place with all different like types of levels. Okay. And every single time I set up an environment strategy, I get the same types of questions. Where do we make stuff? Where do we build stuff? Where do I go and do this? Where do I go and do that? And actually, you know what, man? It kind of makes me scared, because do you really think that Dataverse is a governance layer in the platform? Do you think it would really provide that governance? What do you reckon? Yay? Nay?
I have to say it does. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does. There's a part of me that wants to say it doesn't. That small part that says kind of maybe looks into things with too much attention to detail. But yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm gonna go with yes.
Okay, so question number one, every single time I do an environment strategy, question number one, every time without fail, right, is running through the process. And in every single organization, when I chat to them, they say to me, hey, Chris, should we put Dataverse in or not? Yeah. And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
often, yeah, man, it's quite crazy. And often I get the response going, oh, but what are we going to do with it? We're not going to use it to store data. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Right. But ultimately, the whole thing is, when do we put Dataverse in or not? And I always have to think about this, right? And I always think, actually, what are the opportunities for Dataverse? So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to actually run you through some live stuff now. But I think we need to run through a couple of things first before we do that, because this is pretty important. When thinking about environment management and environments inside any governance layer inside an organization, Dataverse is not always a data storage facility. Okay, well, so our anti-preps is first piece. It's not always a data storage facility. It is way more things than just that, right? So we're going to take a look at a couple of different areas, likely break some stuff, and maybe show you one or two things that you might not have known, some secret little nuggets of awesome. You might know them already. If you know them, that's awesome. If you don't know them, this is going to be quite useful. But we'll take a look at the first thing is around, obviously, Dataverse being a cloud-based relational data storage facility. And he will do his piece. We'll talk about auditing. We'll talk about the administration center. We'll talk about application lifecycle management and solutions. Backup and restore, very, very important point here. We'll run through some security, and actually I'll show you live what happens and how to break it. And then finally, security groups. Okay, so we'll run you through that process. Antti, are you ready to go through the first few?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
Cool.
am ready, and I have about, Fraz, is this session for an hour or 45? An hour?
Yeah.
Cool. So then I got about 10 minutes because I know Chris needs about 20 to do the really exciting stuff. My stuff is just boring. Y'all know this anyways. So let me share my screen. Let's pick the 3 screens. How do I share this thing called Teams? Yes, I
Yeah,
got
we
the
got it,
right
man.
one, but that's not the one I want to share first, because I want to talk about cloud-based relational data storage facility. So relational database. So what is it? And I was like, I was thinking what what a good explanation for this would be. And this is maybe, level 100, level 50. What's it mean? Relational database storage. So I just thought that I'd kind of actually show you something, how I kind of comb through table or entity relationships myself. Some of you might know how to do this. Some of you might not. I know this guy's on the call, fantastic person, Jonas Rapp, with a UML diagram generator. So I'm actually going to show you how I can get some, relationships between tables mapped with nothing else than XArm Toolbox. It's loading kind of slow because Teams is killing my machine. So what I'm actually going to do first is I'm going to select a couple of tables. So what I have in the background is I've selected an account, a project. I'm a project operations person, so first I'm selecting project and orders. And what I'm going to do is, in XArm Toolbox UML diagram generator, I've selected the tables, I've selected the relationships, and now I want to visualize them because I need to be able to visualize or see visualizations of things so that I understand them. If I just see things on on paper as bullet points, I'm not gonna necessarily understand them. I need a diagram. I need a picture. I can't draw. I draw stickmen, but I need a picture to be able to understand stuff. So I'm gonna hit on plant UML file. I'm going to create that. And as it's stored on my computer, I already have it. As it's stored on my computer, I'm going to open up a scary thing called VS Code, which is actually really, really cool. And I've opened up that UML diagram that I've created with XRM Toolbox, and I'm going to export that current diagram. And as I export it, I'm actually going to see a visualization, an entity model of account, project, and order. And these are just, these are the columns or fields, whatever you want to call them, that I've selected in XRM Toolbox. So I've selected the unique identifier, the primary key for account, as well as the account name, same for order, same for project. So, maybe the tip for you to take home is, if this is clear as water, then perfect, good for you. But if you've not used this before and you need to create visualizations of your data model, just try the diagram generator by Jonas. It's a fantastic tool. So kind of on to the second point, because I got 7 minutes to do the remainder of my stuff, or Chris is gonna kick my butt. So let's talk about auditing next.
That's fine, dude. Don't worry. Don't worry.
No, I'll leave you sometimes. I'll leave you plenty of time to do that. I know us. You got the really cool stuff here. So let's talk about auditing. So what do we have for auditing on Dataverse? So what is auditing? What does it mean from a Dataverse point of view? Well, in short, it means, and let me try to pull up my correct browser tab. What auditing means is that when we have that turned on and someone goes into one of your applications, in this case, it's a turbine management solution, someone goes into your application and they change something. Maybe, Karen from accounts sets the credit limit for an account to, from 1 million to 2 million, and maybe there should be an approval, and someone's like, hey, Karen, or someone's, trying to figure out who has set the credit limit from 1 million to 2 million. It's just like magically gone up. So what we can do is we can turn on auditing on Dataverse, and on our records, when we're on our record and we do a change. So let's just, for the sake of example, imagine I'm Karen. I think I'd be a lot prettier if I was Karen. And I'll change this, whatever MW means. I've changed the value. And as I hop over to audit history, which is now turned on, I can see that on today, the 19th, at 5:35, which is UTC, Chris Huntingford, which is apparently I'm not Karen now, I'm Chris, has changed the field MW. Why does this not say column, Ryan? From 5 to 0.01. So with auditing, we can see and you really track the changes that people make in the system. If they make, I'm not going to say breaking changes, but changes that might have a dramatic business impact. Kind of keep tabs on what's going on in the system. So from auditing, I'm going to actually switch gears, and I'm going to hop over to kind of going over administration on a broader level. So how do we really, how do we administer Dataverse and Power Platform and all of this stuff? And again, if you're versed with Dataverse, then this is, again, you're familiar with this. If you're new to Dataverse, then this is this might be something that you've not seen before. So in our project Power Platform Admin Center, we got a whole bunch of stuff that we can use to our advantage to learn what's really going on in our Dataverse environments, what's going on in Power Platform as a whole. So this is sort of the heart of your Power Platform, the Power Platform Admin Center. So when we land in PPAC, Power Platform Admin Center, short for PPAC, what we'll see first is our environments. Everything that's in our environment, whether it's a Dataverse for Teams environment, a trial, another Dataverse for Teams environment, a developer environment, or a production. Oh, we got one production there. We'd also see our sandboxes. Apparently, Chris doesn't do sandboxes. He goes straight to prod with his customizations, but that's another topic. So then if we kind of want to see what do we really have, we have a bunch of analytics features for, not just for Dataverse, but for Power Automate and Power Apps as well. Under our Dataverse administration, we can see, for example, our active users. Well, in this case, it's Chris's demo environment, so there's basically 7 active users with relevant search being ironically the biggest user. But in any case, we'll see our active users under our analytics tab. We can see our entity usage. This is actually kind of cool to kind of spy on what are some of the entities, as in tables, that take up what are the most used custom entities and what are the most used entities or tables that we use. Well, this is actually bothering me a bit. It says entities. It should say tables. So under resources, this is probably the most frequent tab that I personally visit. Is what's our capacity? When do we have to start putting our hand in the pocket to pay more? And I think Microsoft's going to send Chris a pretty nice invoice one day for this environment. He's like, how do you get like 254,000 for percent over?
Skill and determination, my friend.
That is just stealing, man. So naturally, in our PPAC in PPAC, we're also able to do those things that we all consultants love, which is support requests. So basically, you handle everything from PPAC when it comes to administration. You can hop over to your environments, and I'm not going to dive too deep into this. Let's just pick the prod here. Let's mess with Chris's prod. You can go to your prod. You can or your environment. You can look at the resources, the apps that you have in your environment, the add-ons that you need, like AR Builder credits, whatnot. If you want to rename your URL, you do all that stuff from PPAC. So kind of from admin centers to the last piece, because we have another portal. So what Microsoft is really great about, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, you can decide that for yourself, is we have so many different portals where we manage stuff. So PPAC is for administering the platform, whereas our Make portal, so this is called the Maker portal. In our Make portal, we can manage what we're actually building. So what are the solutions and those specific components that we use in our solution? What are those? How are those managed? All that is handled in our Make portal, so make.powerapps.com. And in our Make portal, what we can do is we can, for example, create our solutions, which are, that could be a session of its own, but essentially a solution is a container. And that container contains the customizations that we do. So you saw the Turbine app. That is an application that we would put in a container. And in that container, which is that solution, in that container, we could ship that from one environment to another environment, or even from one tenant to another tenant. So the analogy that I lots of times use is think of like those big container ships. So a solution is like a container on a container ship that comes from China to Europe or China to the US. It has stuff in it. The stuff comes out, the container kind of goes back in and fetches another load. So how do we create solutions? Well, it's pretty easy. We choose, plus new for a new solution. Chris needs beer solution. I can't speak and type solution. We select a publisher. I'm very picky about this. Like, create your own publisher. I don't want to use the default. When I see someone use the default, I'm like, that's a cringe moment for me. So I create a solution. It's just a container. I can just go in and delete it whenever I want. If I have something in it, that stuff is not going to go away unless it's unless it's managed. this unmanaged solution, I can just delete and the stuff won't disappear. But in the solution, I can add, whatever components I want to add to that before I transport this to another environment. And that could be, for example, let's click on add existing, add model driven, and let's add for that, search for that turbine management solution. And, long story short, if I would have all the dependencies added, what I would do is I would export this solution from this environment and import it into, after testing, into prod, and then I'd have a business ready solution. But for this, like I said, it's unmanaged. So what I can just do is I can just go in and delete that container. So the container goes away, the stuff that's in it stays and doesn't disappear because it was an unmanaged solution. So those are some of the really, really quick points about Dataverse opportunities. And I'm going to switch over to Chris. I took 3 minutes extra. He's got some really, really interesting stuff to show. So, bro, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sausage. Yeah, so just to be clear, ALM, if you don't have Dataverse, you don't get solutions. Yeah? Cool. I just want to make sure. Auditing, obviously, within Dataverse, and then the Dataverse data structures, right? I'm going to share my screen real quick, and do me a favor, just can you confirm that you can see it right there? You got that? Cool, cool, cool. Yep. All right, so the other one I want to bring up is backup and restore. I'm not going to show you, but this is important. Your environments are not backed up if you don't have Dataverse. Okay, so if you don't have Dataverse in there and you've got flat out, whatchamacallit, Power Platform licensing, the M365 license, yeah, it's not backed up from what I understand. I can see there's somebody with a question in the chat. Do you want to ask it real quick?
Ooh, question in the chat. I'm not seeing a question.
Somebody with a hand up. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's all good. Yeah. Okay, Lawrence, no worries, bro. Alrighty, man. So I'm going to talk to you guys about a couple of things. Okay, so first of all, backup and restore. You need to have Dataverse in your environment in order for your environment to be backed up. Okay, it's pretty important that you know that. A lot of people don't. It's not exactly shouted out from the rooftops. So just as a heads up, it's not going to cost you any extra to have Dataverse in your environment from a capacity perspective. So when you fire up an environment, whether it has Dataverse or not, it's 1 gig capacity. Okay. Now, there's a reason that capacity storage is in place. This is important. Imagine Antti, myself, Jonas, Rebecca, and Victor. In fact, I'll be scared to go to a pub with Victor. But imagine the 5 of us go to a pub, right? And Rebecca says, hey, I'm going to bring 50 euro. And Victor says, I'm going to bring 40. And Jonas says, I'm going to bring 30. Antti brings 20. And I bring 10. And we all drink the same amount of beer. Who wins? This guy. Do you know why? I didn't have to pay for as much. And that's why capacity storage exists, my friends. Is that we've kept honest and we pay for what we use. Anywho, I am going to talk to you about my 15th favorite thing in the world, and that is security. Okay. And security is fun, right? Now, a lot of people probably won't agree with me, but I'm going to show you some stuff. So hopefully you can see my screen. Antti, just let me know.
Yep, it's there.
Marvelous. So point number 1, I thought I'll show you is let's drag that little bad boy over there. So I'm going to go into my Microsoft 365 Admin Center and I'm going to select user 21. Okay. And as you can see, user 21 is unlicensed for everything. User 21 does not have a Power Platform license, has no Microsoft 365 licensing, but can log in. Everyone cool. When user 21 logs in, look at this bad boy. Unlicensed. No access to apps, right? Everyone cool with that? I hope you are. Let me show you something even more awesome. User 21 is an unlicensed user. I have no Microsoft 365 license. Make.powerapps.com. Right, make.powerapps.com opens with no user license, just to confirm. And I have access to the default environments. And when I take a look in here, let's have a look and see what I can do. Apps. Okay, so I have no license. It's actually told me, but I'm going to explain to you something a little scary here. I've manually ripped out the basic and environment maker role from this user. Okay. Now I'll explain what that is later. I have no user license. Remember, I have no Microsoft 365 licensing, no Power Platform licensing. Test app. Awesome. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and make my app. And while I'm doing that, might get a tequila. Cool. No license. Remember that. All right, let's go into data. I'm going to go ahead and add some data, and we're going to go ahead and connect to my favorite data source of all time, SharePoint. And I do have access to this list somehow, and I'm going to go ahead and select that list. We'll pick, I don't know, let's check down there. Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and quickly whack in a gallery. Bam, done deal. And I'm going to go ahead and select that. And obviously there's nothing in there. I picked the terrible list, and I'm going to go ahead and file save my app. So let's say save. We'll call this the app of awesome. Magical, right? No license. Right. So there's my app. I can run my app. Okay. Obviously, it's not going to work super well, but I have an app. Okay. So I'm going to ditch that app. Let's just go back, right? So there's my app. I've done this all with 0 licensing. I'm going to go ahead and ditch that app. Right now, you can see my app is over there. I've confirmed that I've got no privileges. If I try and share this app with user 23, okay, it breaks. I have no license. I'm in default. Okay, so number one, what's pretty important here is the fact that you do have the ability to make things without a Power Apps license or even an Office license. However, you don't have access to, oops, decided to run, it should have blocked that. Might take a little while to sync through. You won't have access to run your apps. And that's pretty important. So it does take some time to synchronize. But basically, in your default environment, that is a scary place to be. Okay, Microsoft aren't going to get rid of it. And we call default environment Teams productivity environment. So make a productivity. And what we do is we use data loss prevention to lock down the roles. However, this environment has got Dataverse, and it's a good thing. Okay, so as you can see, Dataverse over there, my permissions are locked down. I can't do anything with Dataverse. Let's go back up and swing out to my admin console. All right, so this is where I'm logged in as my admin. There we go. There's me. And if I go ahead and take a look at user, let me just make sure I get the right number. User number 21, if I go to admin.powerplatform.com and I go to my environments, and I go ahead and select my default environments. Okay, first things first, let's go to settings. If you do not have Dataverse, you do not have the ability to drill into these settings. You must have Dataverse. Dataverse gives you the ability to manage granular security, as well as things like backup and restores as well. So without Dataverse, you don't have all this shiny goodness. So I'm going to pop in here, and I'm going to go and take a look at some of my kind of settings in the Dataverse security menu. Let's take a look at users, right? Default environment, every single person in your organization is added as a standard. Okay, they're all there, right? If you go into your default environment. It's kind of cool though, because it promotes citizen development. However, it can be a little scary because if you go into any user as a default as well, I'm just going to pick a random user, right? Let's go ahead and pick, let's pick user number 5. If I pop open user number 5, and what it'll do is it'll take me into the good old classic user UX, which is what I'm going to be using now. Sometimes it gets a bit buggy, so you sometimes got to do it twice. Anyway, while it's doing its thing, I can actually go and check out what user roles and privileges this user has, right? So you're all used to that. What you may not know is that when a user gets created in the default environment as a standard, they get assigned 2 roles. They get assigned basic user and environment maker, okay? Basic user roles allow you to execute apps to a certain extent, right? Let's just try that all again. They allow you to execute apps and flows to a certain extent. What the environment maker does is it gives you access to that dropdown. All right, so I'll show you what I mean by that. So if you take a look here and you go to manage roles, this user has got basic user and environment maker. If I delete those roles from this default environment, in a few minutes time, those roles will reappear. Okay, pretty interesting. The reason for that is because you have different methods of accessing your security structure within Dataverse, right? So if I go to make.powerapps.com, the thing that's giving me the access to this menu at the top here, this little goodie over here, the thing that's giving me the access is one of these 4 roles. You won't get access to that menu structure if you don't have one of these 4 roles. I have a support ticket as proof of that. And what's also pretty interesting is the fact that if you remove the roles, they don't appear back. They will appear back. Okay. You can do some level of edits, all right? But now I'm going to back this up with I don't know what happens after this, right? Because there's certain things that may or may not persist. So what I can do is if user 5 is assigned a security role, so let's ditch user 5 over there, and let's go back to user, whoops, we'll go back to user 20. Okay, let's go inside Teams. Oh, wait, I've got it open over there. And I've got to manage roles. What I can do is I can make sure that this user can at least run apps. Now, typically, basic user in other environments is really cool because that's the user that you use to run apps from the app launcher. Okay, really, really great role. It doesn't give you access to the menu. The thing that gives you them access to the menu is this little dude over here, environment maker. So if I go ahead and I select that role, now obviously it's not going to persist right now, okay? I close up user 20. We both agree that they've got that role, okay? And I go back to my list of roles over here. I want to show you something gorgeous. And this is what I'm saying, Dataverse is the governance tool from a security perspective. If you don't know dynamics, this may be foreign to you. Only listen to the part I'm going to tell you about this. If you do know dynamics, awesome, you'll be used to this, okay? When you click on customization, what this set of tools does here is it gives you access to change certain security privileges in your maker experience. That's pretty cool, right? Now, Ryan mentioned that a lot of stuff persits back down to the table level, which is true. But if I go into another environment, and you can see it says Canvas apps, look at that over there, right? And it's not going to persist immediately. If I go into another environment, create a user role, and remove Canvas app access, that user will not be able to create Canvas apps at the lowest level. The thing to remember about security roles, which is very important, is that it's the most positive, not the most negative. It's not like data loss prevention, where every connector is guilty until proven innocent. Every role is innocent until proven guilty. So what will happen is that when you remove the ability for a user to create Canvas apps, right, and they only have that one role, when they go into make.powerapps.com, right, and they try and make an app, they're actually blocked, and it says you do not have access when you click on that Canvas button. Now, that's pretty cool. Default does not obey the same rules, okay? So you've got to manage defaults with data loss prevention. You've got to be very careful, right? So default with data loss prevention, you can disable app sharing in default, so you can edit the basic user role in default if you want to. However, if you edit the basic user role in defaults and Microsoft make an update, your role change may not persist. So you need to remember that your role change may not persist. Okay. So if you say, I'm going to have Canvas apps, everyone can do whatever they want except share stuff. If Microsoft make an update, that role change may not persist. Okay. There's other really, really cool little nuggets in here. I can lock down solutions. So I can actually block people from viewing or managing solutions over here. Okay. So if you want to lock down ALM, you just turn that bad boy off. I can stop people running flows if I want to. So if I really, really need to, and I want to be a real, real stroppy bugger, I can turn off flow runs over there. Okay. Now, you've got to remember, if you mess with the default roles, okay, if you mess with the default roles, they may not persist. The updates may not persist. So you need to be careful here. I'm sure Microsoft are looking into potentially changing that. I don't know. We have had chats with the product group. It's pretty exciting though, but I'm hoping that they do. But remember, your granularity on a governance level from a security perspective inside your customization tab in user roles and permissions is far more granular than if you don't have Dataverse. Okay, I can stop app sharing if I want to with this. Without Dataverse, you can't do that. It's the Wild West. Okay, so just remember, when you go into your environments and you decide to turn on Dataverse, you need to pay attention to two roles, your basic user role, okay, and your environment maker role. Those are the two roles you need to pay attention to. When you're in default, default does not obey the same user roles as a normal environment. Default's the Wild West. Therefore, you need to lock it down with data loss prevention. But from a governance perspective, when I look at security, you've got way more control in the way in which you manage environments. Okay. However, when we start thinking about this and moving on to the last bit, when we start thinking about this and wrapping this up, is that when looking at Dataverse, okay, you got to make the decision when you build your environment, Dataverse or not Dataverse. Antti and I have seen this in every single organization we've worked in, where there is definitely an approval and compliance thing, right? So organizations have to say, are we going to allow Dataverse to be a data storage facility? Sometimes it doesn't have to be. right? Sometimes it doesn't have to be. Sometimes you can use it for ALM, backup and restore, and security. I've got customers where I don't touch Dataverse for data. However, now that they know it's there, they're really amped on using it, right? Okay. Education. The education depth is quite high, especially when folks have been more focused on modern workplace and flatter data structures. This is a highly normalized data storage facility. Backups and restores. You got Dataverse in your environment, it's backed up. You got 7 days, right? It is what it is. I don't manage the backup rules. If you've got Dynamics in that environment, it's 28 days. Okay. Who owns it? Who actually owns Dataverse? Dataverse is this weird little pond between citizen developments, okay, and pro developments. It's like for every maker, and we see lots of different types of folks using it, but sometimes it can be a little bit tough to get involved in. And then the capacity, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Do we use Dataverse as a data storage facility, as a governance facility, or both? And then Antti and I spoke about the management overhead, right? So thinking about, excuse me, how Dataverse will be managed in your organization. It's not as simple as cutting the mustard, right? But I do want to say thank you very much. And Antti, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's always epic to present with you.
And one thing I want to add about
Yeah.
that backup and the restore, because I know I'm very positive that a lot of people don't know this, but if you go to default and you try to back up or restore your default, you're actually not going to be able to do that from the UI, from PPAC. It is possible. It is possible, folks. Support request. You can restore your default with a support request. That was mind blowing. I did not know that a few weeks back, but that is actually possible.
Right. So we're trying to, and Antti, thank you very much, dude. Do you want to add anything else to the rest of the other bits?
I think we're done, man. I mean, we got 2 minutes to go. If someone has any questions, unmute or scream in chat, scream at us, wave your hands, whatever you want to do. Ask now or forever be silent.
And yeah, and folks, thank you very much for joining us. I know it's a late one for a lot of you, but we do appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully you have another great session. I think Rebecca's next. I'm not too sure. I know Rebecca kicks ass. She's a wonderful presenter. Yes, there she is. Hey, what's up? So we're going to hand over to Rebecca, and folks, have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chris and Antti. Excellent. So that's helped keep the energy going. Really some good nuggets of information there as well as we proceed through to the last leg of today's event. And great to have Rebecca joining. Rebecca, you are joining us from the Netherlands. Is that correct?